Midsummer is when the days are long and the strawberries are ripe. In Sweden, they celebrate with festivals, music, dancing, and food, including the Swedish strawberry cake or Jordgubbstårta. This is 3 layers of airy sponge cake filled with pastry cream, strawberries, and frosted with whipped cream. So let's take a culinary trip to Sweden where I share with you the recipe and cultural traditions surrounding this cake. And you're gonna wanna stick with me throughout the video because you don't wanna miss seeing the Swedes hop around the midsummer pole like frogs. Let's get started. Before making the sponge, you'll want to make a pastry cream for the filling and chill it in the fridge. For my pastry cream recipe, head over to my Norwegian School bread video. I'll put the link and timestamp below. For the sponge, add 4 eggs to a stand mixer and beat on medium speed. After they are well combined, sprinkle in slowly 200 grams of sugar. Then you're going to beat the eggs and sugar for 15 minutes. Yes, I actually said 15 minutes. When I first set out to make this cake, I thought, oh, what a simple recipe, this will be easy. Boy, was I wrong. I had to test this recipe 5 times before getting it right. The problem I had was with this sponge. Traditionally, this cake is made with a fatless sponge, meaning there is no addition of butter or oil. Because of that, this is a light and fluffy cake with much of its lift coming from the eggs. But this means it can be quite temperamental. Luckily, after much trial and error, talking to some fellow bakers, watching some YouTube videos, and rewriting the original recipe, I'm confident to say that if you follow all of my tips, your sponge will turn out great. So you'll see here that the eggs and sugar have turned into a pale, fluffy, silky mass. Now whisk together 50 grams or 1/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon all-purpose flour, 80 grams or half a cup of potato starch or cornstarch, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Then sift the mixture 2 times to remove any lumps. Once sifted, add the flour into the eggs 1 tablespoon at a time using a whisk. You need to be very careful not to deflate the eggs. So you're going to fold the flour in very slowly, letting the mixture fall through the whisk and folding back up again and repeating the process until all the flour is fully incorporated. While I'm doing this, I'll tell you a little bit about the cake. This cake is a staple of the Swedish Midsummer celebration, which usually takes place between June 20th and June 26th. It used to be celebrated on June 24th, the feast day of St. John the Baptist, but it was moved to being a weekend celebration in 1954. Midsummer in Sweden is one of the biggest holidays of the year, rivaling that of Christmas. At the center of the celebration is the maypole or midsummer pole. This tradition started in the Middle Ages and was adopted likely from the Germans, who decorated poles with greenery and raised them on May 1st. Though the maypole came to be associated with midsummer and not May in Sweden, when greenery is still sparse at that time of the year. Midsummer is not complete without dancing around the maypole. Often these are folk dances done in traditional clothing. One of the classics is Små brodorna, a dance where everyone sings and hops around the pole like frogs. Looking back at the batter here, once all of your flour is incorporated, you're going to pour it into a 9-inch springform pan that is lined with parchment paper on the bottom. But do not grease and flour your pan. This is one trick that helped me with the success of this cake. If the sides are greased, the cake may fall once out of the oven. This is similar to an angel food cake, which is also made in an ungreased pan. Then you're going to smooth the top. Now, conventional cake advice says to give your pan a whack on the countertop before baking to release any bubbles. But you don't want to do that with this because it might let out some of the air in those voluminous eggs. Instead, take a toothpick and swirl it through the batter to release any large bubbles. Now bake the cake on the lowest rack in a 350 Fahrenheit or 180 Celsius preheated oven for 35 minutes. When 35 minutes is up, do not test the cake with a toothpick. It will partially deflate your sponge. Also, do not remove your cake from the oven. Prop the door slightly open and set a timer for 15 minutes. Not bringing the cake into the cool air will help it not to deflate. Once it has cooled in the oven for 15 minutes, remove it and place your pan upside down on a cooling rack until fully cooled down. Angel food cakes are also cooled upside down. Now run the knife along the perimeter of the cake before releasing the spring. Next, flip it over and remove the parchment paper. Place the cake right side up on a plate and place it in the freezer for 30 minutes to 1 hour. This will help you when slicing the sponge into 3 layers. Next, roughly chop about 1 3/4 pound or 800 grams of fresh strawberries for the filling of the cake. Back to the midsummer celebration, food is a big part of the festivities. A typical meal consists of pickled herring of different varieties, new potatoes with sour cream, dill, and chives, boiled eggs, and of course, strawberries and cream, often in the form of a strawberry cake. Accompanying the meal is cold beer and schnapps, usually aquavit. Once your sponge has hardened in the freezer, use a serrated bread knife to slice it into 3 layers. You're going to take your knife and run it shallowly along the perimeter. Once you've created a guide for yourself, continue turning the cake and slicing deeper each go-around until you've cut all the way through. Place each layer on a separate plate and stick them back in the freezer until ready to assemble your cake. In regards to the history of this specific cake, it seems to have been created in the 1930s. Before that, all different forms of strawberry cakes were found in Swedish cookbooks, but none that looked like the iconic whipped cream and strawberry cake that people associate with Midsummer today. The cake seems to have appeared for the first time in a Rumford baking powder advertisement in the Swedish newspaper Svenska Dagbladet in 1934. I wanted to add the actual baking powder ad with the recipe to the video, but I wasn't able to access the article without a Swedish bank account. I'll link the archived ad below. Now it's time to assemble the cake. Place your bottom layer on some kind of base that will hold your cake. I'm using the bottom of my removable tart pan. Take half of your chilled pastry cream and spread it on this first layer. As I said before, you can find my pastry cream recipe in my Norwegian School bread video that I will link and timestamp below. Then take half of your chopped strawberries and spread them evenly over the pastry cream. Place the second layer on top of the strawberries. Repeat with the rest of the pastry cream and strawberries before placing the top layer on. For the frosting, beat 1 pint or 475 milliliters of heavy whipping cream until you reach stiff peaks. Traditionally, this is made without sugar, but if you're American, this may sound a bit strange to you to not add sugar into your whipping cream. If you want to add sugar, I'd say add between 2 and 4 tablespoons of powdered sugar into your cream before beating it. You'll want really stiff peaks if you plan to pipe the cream. If you don't want to pipe it, you can beat them until soft peaks and spread the cream with an offset spatula for a more rustic look. And then once you've frosted the cake, you can top your cake with a couple handfuls of whole strawberries. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video and the recipe. I loved learning about the cultural traditions surrounding this cake. That's my favorite part of Bake Across Europe. I just love learning about the traditions surrounding each baked good. If you'd like to follow me on social media, every single day on Twitter and Facebook, I share different baked goods and the history and traditions accompanying them. So follow me there. I'll link my accounts below. And friends, this was a labor of love. I really did test this recipe 5 times, and I'm confident to say that if you give it a try and follow my tips and tricks, it should turn out great. Let me know if you do give it a try. And if there are any recipes from Europe that you'd like to see me make in a future video, let me know below. And if you enjoy Scandinavian food, try my Norwegian School bread. Or if you want something totally different, head on over to my German rye bread recipe. And I'll see you next time.